I am out for a little wander in the woods on our property today. It's so beautiful out here, even though it's raining. All of the spring floral details are starting to appear. There are so many beautiful small leaf textures floating around the understory. It's really quite inspiring to be out here. This is actually something that I love to do as part of my creative practice, is actually to get out and go for a walk somewhere and just draw inspiration from my natural surroundings, and I encourage you to do the same. So a few weeks ago, I posted a floral heart on my YouTube page that really piqued the curiosity of a lot of you, and you were wondering how I made it. So the idea with that piece was that it would be a heart that had living components in it, but that it would be fully biodegradable so that it could be placed in my garden and naturally fade away, while the living components like the bulbs would be able to root and actually grow, while the rest of the design slowly was incorporated back into the garden. So today I wanted to get outside and make something inspired by that heart. Now this is a different season. When I made that one, which I actually made a few years ago, long before I ever thought of sharing or teaching on YouTube, I made that one, I believe, in February. So it was very wintry out here. And I was making a much more wintry design and really scraping together whatever sort of interesting natural materials I could find. Today I want to show you how I'm going to make a similar heart in the sense of the mechanics, what's below the heart that is holding it all together, and how I'm going to choose my materials so that it can be compostable. But I'm going to be going for a much more springy and floral look, befitting the current season that I'm experiencing in my neck of the woods. So I'm out here right now looking for one particular material, and then I'm going to scurry back in the studio, probably try to get dried off because now the wind is picking up and it's really a bit chilly out here today. I'm looking for a piece of bark. That is my idea for how I'm going to support my design. Instead of having a plastic base or a permanent base, I want something fully natural. So I'm out here looking for a piece of bark, probably a piece of birch bark, that I can form into a heart shape and then build my design off of that. Wish me luck, and I'll show you what I find. I have found some birch bark here. Looks like I should be able to get a big enough piece. I don't want to have more than one piece if I can help it. I don't want to have to tie them together. This would be so gorgeous. In the compost, just gently pull this out. There we go. That should be big enough. Now I'm back in the studio, but I have some friends that are keeping me company in here the last few days that I want to show to you for a minute. The other half of our barn has some very new to the world sweet little goats. So these two were born just last night. And the one making all the racket is right here. I don't know why you're making a racket. And where's your baby? Her little baby is having a huge nap right here. And she's just a few days old. So you'll just have to excuse the noise in the video. Good thing they're cute. It's nice to be inside, hearing the sound of the rain outside. I even had to grab myself a cup of tea to warm up, but at least it's kind of warm in the studio. So I'm going to start by shaping my piece of birch bark into a heart shape, which is pretty self-explanatory. So I'm kind of starting with a triangle. Does not need to be perfect. Now I have done hearts where I showcase the bark and I kind of want that to be part of the design. That's not the case this time, and in this instance I'm going to be turning the heart over so that this prettier part is actually going to be the back. It's cleaner, it's prettier, if someone was to inspect my work, which they won't, but this is a better, more professional thing to be showing than this side. So this is going to be the inside of the heart. This is going to be facing upward. So the reason why I picked bark to start my heart off is because I'm going to be using moss as a moisture source and as a mechanic through which I can insert other stems, and it will help hold everything in place. So I wanted something solid that I can place the moss on and sort of affix it to, but something where the moss isn't going to be falling through. So that's why I chose the bark rather than stand here and tie together layers and layers of sticks. Or another solution could be to weave willow together or weave grasses or reeds together to create this shape. That would be quite enjoyable, but I wanted to get this done quick. So this is now my base, but you can see that it's not super strong. So I still want to reinforce this with something just so that it has the rigidity and the strength to hold the rest of my floral. There's nothing worse than creating a beautiful design and having it start to disintegrate because time wasn't spent in just setting up the mechanic properly to be able to handle and hold the materials together. It happens to all of us. It's better for me to take some time right now to figure out how to make the structure of this heart so that it will hold up. So what I'm going to use to strengthen the heart, I happen to have a lot of curly willow floating around the studio right now because we just trimmed down our curly willow tree, and I've been using a lot of these in my bouquets that have been going out. The thicker parts of the curly willow is what I am after here. I'm just grabbing this because it's close by and convenient. Any sticks would do, really. So I'm just going to cut these down so I can strengthen the heart. Look how perfect this one is. That's kind of handy. So I have a hole punch here. I'm simply going to be punching a few holes into the bark so that I can tie the twigs and sticks on with some sisal until I'm happy with the reinforcement. You could also use wire or fishing line or something else. Of course, once again, I'm using sisal because it's compostable. You can see I put these 2 holes too close to the edge, so they ripped out. So I realized I need to put some of my holes further in so that they can't tear out of the softer bark. So I have a framework around my whole heart right now. It's making it a lot more stable. It's not perfect, but it will help to support the sides. So now I'm going to wedge some more twigs just within this framework to just help stabilize it even more. As you can see, I'm starting to create a 3-dimensional grid. So that's actually going to help me with my stem support as I insert flowers. I'm going to save all of these lovely bits. I think I would like to use these with this lovely, fresh, bright green and delicate texture. I think I'd like to use these for decorating the heart as I go. Nice thing with the curly willow is they aren't straight, so it helps me to weave them in and through. Just gonna go around and feel for any loose bits and just tie them onto each other just to reinforce my grid. Several layers of sticks later, I am ready to start putting the moss into the cracks and crevices. And again, with my moss, I gather it also from my woods, and I'm careful to gather it in a way that is going to be renewable and sustainable. So you can see I'm just wedging it down into these lower levels first. Now I'm going to lay some along the top as well. I'm really creating quite a 3-dimensional shape here. I've got some long strands of curly willow. That's going to be next. I'm going to be using these to basically naturally sort of tie the heart and all the moss together. As I go, I'm adding moss along the sides just to make sure I'm hiding any kind of ugly bits. So as I go, I'm being mindful of using the lines from the willow to help reinforce the shape of the heart and forming the point near the end. Great. I now have a heart base that is ready for flowering. Not only is it ready, it is completely compostable. It has a moisture source for the flowers so that they stay happy and hydrated. And I'm happy with the shape of it. That is a tricky part sometimes. I find when making floral hearts that the peaks and the point really need to be exaggerated sometimes just to get the heart to really read properly as a heart. So the dip in here as well, I find that really important, and building up the peaks so that they read. I'm happy now with this basic shape that I have, and I can still make edits as I go, but I want to get to the fun part, which is picking out the lovely spring floral bits that are going to be going into this heart. So we're going to head to the gardens and figure out what I'm going to cut and what color palette I'm going to be using and everything else. So let's go. I often find it helpful when narrowing down a color palette and trying to decide what I want to do to start with a specific flower, whether that's a flower that I grew a lot of, whether it's a new to me color or a color that I'm just excited about, or a variety that I haven't worked with before. In this case, I want to start with some pansies, and these pansies are going to inform the rest of my choices. This is the first year that I've tried to grow pansies as a cut flower, so I'm really excited about this little experiment of mine, and I have them growing in my hoop house, and I have them planted at the base of my sweet peas. That should help to shade them and help to get extended stem length. I'm just excited about these because they're a new to me variety. You can see that they're still somewhat in bud, so I'm going to be gently unfurling these little buds. So we have a color here that's a smoky purpley red, and it moves into a more brighter burgundy plus a little bit of peach in the bottom petal. So I'm going to go see what else I can find that ties into this color. Hellebores are an obvious choice right now, and I have quite a few in the darker red and pink tones. So I'm going to be picking a few of these. I also have just a few of this new to me hellebore that I haven't even planted yet called Rio Carnival. And I want to include a few of these. They're going to help to add some definition because of the white edges. So they're going to just mix in really nicely. And the base color in this hellebore matches very nicely with the color in the pansies. I've spotted a really fun color connection now, and that is this hyacinth. This is the hyacinth Gypsy Queen, and it's a soft pinky peach, and it's tying so perfectly into the little hint of peach that is in those little pansy petals. So we're gonna add this color in now and then work on establishing even more of a connection, hopefully between the two colors with the rest of my garden, but we will see what else I find. I've also spotted a couple of heucheras that tie in with my color scheme, which now is going from purpley reds and into sort of peachy coppers. So I have a purple heuchera leaf. It's really very similar in the shade to the pansies on the back, and on the front it has a silver lacing that's really pretty and a really lovely detail. I also have this one, and this one is called Hopscotch, and it's a sort of a sunset tropical reddish and peachy kind of colors. So that's really lovely as well. While I was out in the woods this morning gathering the moss, I also noticed a lot of our native salmonberry was flowering. So it's just a lovely hot pink color on these blooms and buds. And I even really enjoy them with the petals not on the flower. So I grabbed some of these as well. It's a little bit of a jump from the color palette that I'm building, but I may end up including these as well, just for their lovely little pops and daintier size. So let's look at the color story that I've built so far, so you can kind of see a summary of how my little color journey has gone. So we started with the lovely little pansies, in the greenhouse with some smoky purples and even a hint of peachy coral colors underneath. And definitely a warm reddish purple, not a blue tone purple. Then I added the hellebores in a very similar hue and a warm creamy background, so still very related. I also have some larger pansies just from my garden, from the garden center, in a very deep magenta sort of tone, very similar to the other ones. They're tattered and the slugs have been eating them, but I'm going to be including those just as material that I kind of need. And I have some additional hellebores. This is a bit of a lighter pinky one and a very deep dark one, a dark red. So I will probably be including some of those as well, just a mixture for some visual interest. And then I came across the hyacinth with these peachy pinky buds, and they tie in here. We should probably shift these. They tie in with these pansies and the peachy colors in these pansies. And then I spotted the heuchera leaves in a few different shades just to enrich this palette. The silvery ones, as well as these more coppery colors that tie in a little bit more on this side of the world. And of course, the salmonberry blossoms, that really pink is a tint of red. It's red pigment with white. So they feel at home here near these reddish purples. So that is our ingredient selection so far. And I may add or subtract things as I go, depending on what the design needs. One thing I forgot to mention is that I also have some daffodils that I may put into the heart. It sort of depends. They're a little bit large for the scale of the heart, and for the design that I'm going for and for the size of the heart itself, I do need to keep scale in mind, and I can't really be putting whopping big huge flower heads into the heart. It will really throw off the design and it won't be as successful. But I do have some smaller buds like these creamy daffodils here that I may end up including as well. I'm so sorry about the goats, guys. She's been yelling all day. She just wants to go out with the rest of the herd. She is perfectly fine and very well taken care of, and she is better off here with her brand new baby. It is safer for them on their own where they don't have competition. So let's dig into this heart. The first thing I'm going to do is place some of the hellebores. It just so happens to be an ingredient that I have the most of. So I'm going to start with those as sort of my base that I can build up from. So cutting individual blooms, and I'm going to be using a bamboo skewer to help me place these. When we're working with moss, we need something to help us push stems in, especially softer stems. I'm going to be working with numbers like 3, 5s, and 8s in terms of my proportions of my flowers. And just having some natural variations really helps to create a more natural look. I've placed a smaller hellebore there. I'm going to place this larger one slightly off center. And then I want a smaller bloom. I'm going to start creating triangles with my placements. I'm kind of tucking things underneath my layer of twigs for now, as I just want to get some sort of a base going here. Switching up to a bit of a different color now. These ones are a bit lighter. And again, looking for some variation in size from larger to medium to smaller. Trying to tuck these in so the stems will be surrounded by moisture. Now I'm going to put in my heuchera leaves. So again, I'm just placing really in triangles, you can see triangle 1, and they don't have to be evenly spaced. Triangle 2, in fact, I really don't want them to be too evenly spaced because things start to look a little bit mechanic. And again, just choosing certain ingredients to elongate and sort of exaggerate the shape of the heart. So I've put a little one down here. Okay, and I'm going to tuck in. I only have a few precious coppery ones. Okay, I'm going to save this little one because I've decided I want it higher up. I'm going to get these. I have 5 of these sort of really sad poppies. So I'm going to get these in. My idea was just to sort of have them more in the background and just adding some color. I don't really want to showcase these. I do want them to sort of disappear a little bit because they're very tattered. They should be the wallflowers in this design. I'm working sort of from larger to smaller ingredients, facing flowers in different directions to keep the eye moving. Hellebores clearly have sort of a face to them. I don't want them all looking the same way. I'm going to put some hyacinths in. Now these, I'm just taking the individual buds off of the stem because I can't put this giant thing in this design. It will not fit in this design. So if I was making this for a customer and it was traveling somewhere, I would use glue or wire to insert these so that they don't go anywhere. In this case, I'm just gonna skip some of that because it's just for me. It smells so good. So yummy. May need some wire for the exterior. So I'm just going to poke a little hooked piece of wire through here and then pull it down. And that'll give me something to insert properly here. So one way to do these in a compostable way is to use a rice glue to be fixing things in. And it's just a glue made out of rice. I can see I'm needing some more material up here to really make that moss reseed the way I want it to. So I'll probably be going and grabbing a few more of the heuchera leaves, still keeping in mind that I want to be working in a 3-dimensionality. Just like making a wreath, I want this heart to have 3 dimensions to it, not just be a flat heart. So I'm wanting to fill in around the sides as well and really enhance that shape. Found a few more really pretty ingredients. I grabbed some of this sedum. You saw this in the daffodil kokedamas, but this is the more reddish one. And some pretty weed seed heads that are very delicate and are going to bring some of that finishing touch and detail that I love. So adding some more heuchera leaves because I'm loving them in this heart, and they're going to help hide some of the greeny moss. Now, if I was doing this for an order, I would definitely be hydrating all of these products properly. I wouldn't just be pulling these out of the garden and sticking them in a design. They would all get proper hydration. Now, you can see something that's happened is that I've lost my shape in here, whether these little items shifted, but I really want to keep that shape there of the heart to make it more clear. So we will move that pansy somewhere else. Some things are just going to sit a little higher, like this gorgeous heuchera leaf. I just find this one really gorgeous, such a pretty color. So I want that one not to get lost. I'm going to put some of this salmonberry in now. I definitely think the size of the blooms are important right now for this design. They're bringing a springiness, a little bit of that leaf. I'm actually really enjoying that. A little bit more hyacinth that I can tuck in Ooh, that's a pretty one. That feels like it needs to be a front and center bloom. I love these little, feel like little strawberries or something. So I'm gonna de-leaf this stem just so that I can just have this somewhere. So I think we'll skip these. They're just too loud. And I may wind some more willow over top. These lovely little bits are gonna go in last. Here is my finished heart, and I just want to review with you some of the design principles that helped me create this heart. And I'm not sure if I remember to mention all of these as I was making it. The goat screaming in the background was getting to me. So the first and very important component of creating something like this is to have a very strong base for it, to have a good foundation that can handle some weight, that has some rigidity and strength, that also has some way for the flowers to last within it, whether we're choosing flowers that don't need a direct water source at all, or whether we're choosing flowers that need the support of some sort of moisture, and how are we going to provide that. So in this case, the moss is providing the moisture, the twigs and willow and the bark are providing the structure along with some sisal to help hold it all together. In terms of adding the floral component, one of the most important things to remember is to be working in a rounded form, to be thinking in a three-dimensional form, and to be layering flowers upon one another for a natural look as well as a depth that can help pull our eye into the design. So if you look at this heart from the side, you can see that there's actually multiple layers, and I even have set some of these little salmon berries to sit and float above the design just to help bring that dimensionality and to make it interesting to the eye and to create interesting things that we can find with our eye as we gaze further upon it. And in terms of creating a successful heart shape, we want to sort of exaggerate the shapes, and as we work to really make sure there are no lines that are taking the eye out of the design. So you can see that the lines that I've left in the design are pulling the eye down through the heart. And I've even created sort of an exaggerated tail. Although this one is a gentle tail, it is there. And I've added more bulk onto the peaks as needed to just emphasize the heart shape so that it reads as a heart. In terms of choosing my ingredients, I followed a color story that is centered around these warmish purple colors, as well as pulling from that into the reds and the pinks and into the peach, which was existing within the one particular pansy. So the nice thing with the hyacinth in this design is the hyacinth is a peachy pink, but it still is a pink to it, which helps to tie it back in with these brighter pink salmon berries. In terms of how many of each ingredient to use, I tended to work in groups of 3 or 5. Some of my ingredients were very limited, so there were only 3. It is a lot more easy to design a natural looking piece successfully when using odd numbers typically. So 3 and 5, and then some ingredients I had a lot more of, obviously, like the hyacinth and the heuchera leaf, especially the dark one. In terms of placements, I placed my ingredients in triangles, not necessarily equilateral triangles, more like an isosceles triangle, but creating a natural placement through the placement of triangles so that nothing is really being too focal and or too close together so that the eye can wander through the design. And further attached to this and creating a natural feel and a natural beautiful texture to the piece is to create with different sizes of blooms. So my hellebore choices for such a small piece, I was really trying to choose different sizes between them. So say a large and a medium and a small bloom if I was only using 3. And that variation in bud size really helps to create a beautiful texture and aesthetic. In order to care for this piece, what I'll be doing is misting it with a generous spritz of water and then keeping it covered in a plastic bag and keeping it in my cooler. So if it were to go out for, say, a sympathy or an event, it would be meant to last only for a day. And so giving it basically a hydration chamber treatment before it goes out would make sure that all the florals are really well hydrated and pumped up with water to withstand being exposed to some of the elements. And one last design tip while I'm thinking of it is that it can help to take a photo of your piece and then look at your piece on the photo rather than in person. You lose a bit of the three-dimensionality that way, but it can really help to showcase parts where your eye is being pulled that you don't really like. So in this case, I actually edited this piece a little bit and I moved around the lighter colored hellebores because two of them were a little too close together and creating sort of a tension in the piece that I didn't like. So you may have noticed that if you were really closely paying attention, it was these three hellebores that I moved around. I traded sizes out. I tucked some underneath things to de-emphasize them. And then I actually swapped the placement of this hellebore and this hyacinth and moved this one a little bit higher up just because it was just competing on the same sort of plane and creating a line here that I did not want. So I know that I haven't really had a chance to touch on the heart that I had posted, the one from winter in February from a few years ago. So if you have any questions about that one that you're still wanting to know about how exactly did I put that together, please feel free to drop me a comment and I would be glad to try to answer your questions. One of the key differences between that heart and this heart is that that heart was made of more foraged materials, and that is also a really rewarding thing to do, is just to challenge oneself with going out and trying to find whatever there is to work with. So if you look really closely at that one, you'll even spot some snail shells in there because I was really scraping up the ingredients for that one. Both of these hearts share a similarity in how they're comprised in terms of the underlying mechanic and also in terms of the twigs that are being used to sort of encapsulate the heart over top. However, that one from February was much more enclosed than this one is. So I hope you enjoyed seeing this. I hope it was helpful. And most of all, I really hope that this has given you some inspiration as well as some tools and knowledge for you to be able to go out and explore your own floral heart. Have fun, and I will see you next time.